Okay, Cuyahoga County Public Works Procurement and Contracting Committee meeting for Thursday, November 16th, 2017 will be called to order. Roll call, please.
Calling the roll, Mr. Tuma.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Ms. Conwell. Ms. Conwell is absent at the moment. Mr. Shrine. Mr. Shrine is absent at the moment. Ms. Baker.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, is there any public comment related to the agenda this morning?
Yes, Mr. George.
Okay. Okay, Mr. George, if you could just please state your full name for the record.
My name is Tony George.
Okay. And Mr. George, while you're here this morning, and if you make your presentation.
I understand I only got 3 minutes, so let me just go through the points.
Okay.
First of all, I'm here to object to the sale R2017-0199. And the reason I'm objecting to the sale is I was one of the bidders on the property, and my bid that we put in is higher than the bid that you're accepting. Second thing I want to say is this whole process regarding this building was not open and transparent, and I've been doing business for 50 years, and I could tell you I felt a lot of cloak and dagger stuff going on here. And I believe there needs to be an investigation into how this process was handled and how they directed the sale of this supposed process that they had, this bidding process. Information from the county's broker was not clear and took days and days to get a response from him. I submitted a timeline to the assistant deputy clerk for the council members to review. The timeline shows all my bids, when I bid, when the county responded. There's an email thread in here, and there's also a text thread that shows that anytime we got a response from the county within 24 hours to 48 hours, we responded, but it took them 13 days to respond to the final bid, where they accepted a bid $62,000 less than than their bid. Now, I understand that this property is with the Cuyahoga County Developmental Disabilities arm of the county. That's near and dear to my heart because I have a son with Down syndrome. I've always supported the levies for Health and Human Services because of that, in a big way. I can tell you this, if you accept this offer and you leave $62,500 on the table that should go to those kids, you'll never see me support another levy moving forward. And right now, if you accept this offer, I could tell you this, I will sue the county and everybody involved and get this thing put on hold, and there will be an investigation. So either we do this bidding process properly, like everybody said they were going to do when they made everybody go to ethics school when we bid on the first county buildings that they put up for bid, which, by the way, ironically, the first set of buildings that the county put up for bids, my company bid on the Courthouse Square building. Every building was sold except that building. We scored the highest and we paid the most, and it was not sold. So why did that happen?
Okay.
So that has nothing to do with this, but this smells like a dead fish.
Okay.
It looks like a duck, and to me it's a duck, and I'm not going to accept it.
All right. We appreciate your comments, and we'll have further discussion on this throughout the committee hearing this morning. So
I'd like to be included in that discussion. I did a timeline for you guys.
Well, the committee has a timeline.
Very detailed.
Yeah, we'll have public discussion, and you're welcome to sit in on the meeting, okay? Thank you for your comments, Mr. George. Appreciate that. Okay, any other public comment related to the agenda, Madam Clerk?
No, no one has signed in.
Okay, and if I could have approval of the minutes from, and we'd like to recognize our colleague, Mr. Schron has joined us this morning as well. If we could have approval of minutes from the November 1st, 2017 meeting, please?
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the meetings of, the minutes of November 1st, 2017 meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And with that, we'll move on to the matters referred to the committee this morning. Madam Clerk, if you could read the first corresponding resolution.
Resolution number 2017-0199, authorizing a purchase and sale agreement with Collab Partners LLC in the amount of $2,500,000 for property located at 7001 Euclid Avenue, Cleveland, permanent parcel number 118-08-018.
Okay, and if we could have someone here from the administration to discuss this resolution. If you could please state your name for the record.
Absolutely. My name is Ryan Jeffers. I work with CBRE. We were the agent listing the property at 7001 Euclid on behalf of the county.
Okay.
Thank you. So thank you very much for having us here today to present. Very happy to be helping the county out with this disposition. Wanted to give you a little bit of background on the property itself, just as context in case the four of you may not be completely familiar with it. Then we'll talk about the process that we went through on the disposition and the various offers that we received and ultimately recommended to the executive and council.
Okay, and are you going to be following
consideration.
the PowerPoint presentation on the screen? Is that? you?
Yes,
Okay.
that's me.
All right, because I don't think we have one up here. Okay. Okay, we'll follow along then. Thanks.
I apologize.
Okay.
Yeah, did not realize you didn't
That's
have
all
screens. So 7001 Euclid Avenue, which is,
Mr. Miller, I'm sorry.
Can you send the PowerPoint to us so that we have it in the?
A
absolutely,
copy of that, yeah, please.
following the meeting or,
Yeah, as soon as you can. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Councilman.
7001 Euclid Avenue is, as was stated, the vehicle maintenance and storage facility for the Cuyahoga County Board of Developmental Disabilities. At least it has been until recently. The board has recently made the decision to relocate out of the facility and consolidate their operations in a different location. The building is, well, it's along a pretty interesting stretch of ground and roadway right now in Northeast Ohio. Right at 70th and Euclid, it lies along the Health Tech Corridor with really good proximity to University Circle, the hospitals, and a lot of the development that is happening along Euclid and Chester over in the eastern part of Cleveland. There's about 64,000 square foot of real property on the site. It's comprised of two buildings, one of which is the primary building for the vehicles and an office section on the southwest corner. The other piece is a small 1,600 square foot vehicle wash facility that's in the back in the parking area. It's a 3.5 acre parcel, roughly, that is, again, comprised of the building and the parking in the rear. There's an exceptional amount of parking on the site. It was built in 1950, but the Board of Developmental Disabilities made significant renovations and expansions on the building in 1988 and 2002. Another couple of notes just about the property itself. It is on the north side of Euclid Avenue, but it's also bounded by East 70th and Chester, which gives it really good accessibility. And there's a 60 kilowatt generator on site, which is kind of interesting, very large power source. The context around the property is that it is technically owned by Cuyahoga County, but it was acquired in 1982 for the purposes of housing this facility for the Board of Developmental Disabilities. That group has spent all of the money in order to operate, repair, and maintain the building for the last 35 years. So not even talking operations, in capital alone over that time frame, it's been about a $7 million spend out of that group's funds. Right now, it sits in a very interesting place, as we talked about in Cleveland. Across the street is the location of the new dealer tire headquarters. It's right next door to the site where the True by Hilton Hotel is planned. and it's within good proximity of other development, notably Midtown Tech Park, Link 59, and some other projects. With the Board of Developmental Disabilities plan to relocate, they knew that they had to go through some sort of process to dispose of the property in the real market. So a couple of thoughts or a couple of comments about how this was laid out at the beginning. Because of the nature of the property and its occupancy and who's been caring for it all these years, there was an agreement with the county that the Board of Developmental Disabilities, while not the technical owner, would receive the vast majority of proceeds from any sale. There's a first piece that goes to the county because there are some costs associated with the sale that the county has to bear. And then the balance, whatever that number would be, goes to the board for their funds. The communication from CBRE was directed through the legal counsel for the county and then coordinated with the Board of Developmental Disabilities legal counsel so that they could stay apprised of the process following our engagement in the spring. So, as I said, we were engaged in the spring. The sale of the property was announced on May 9th, and it was a pretty good campaign to market the property openly so that everybody knew about it, so that everybody had an opportunity to come and learn about it, get the information that was available on the property, and to take tours. So we had it listed on 3 different online MLS services. We created and launched a website where we not only had property information and pictures and plans, but also we had various files and information about the property, that were in an area on the website that were reserved for folks who had registered and signed confidentiality agreements. We put up signage on the property, and we did direct marketing to various folks, developers, neighbors, a database, proprietary database that CBRE keeps. That all in all, it was over 5,000 organizations and names that we touched during the course of marketing the property. As I said, we had 2 open houses. Those were held in May and June. We had numerous private tours. All in all, over 30 groups came to walk through the property at various times. We were doing direct solicitation, and the first call for offers that we did make on this property was in late July. So in late July, we received 2 offers on the property, and neither of which was to the level that was acceptable to the county or the Board of Developmental Disabilities. But that really did help to spur off a negotiation process with various bidders in order to get to the highest and best offers from each group. The proposal that's being recommended today is that was made by CoLab Partners, which many of you, I believe, know by now is a partnership that includes Gleason Construction and the Gleason Laboratory Services arm, as well as Joel Shear, who is a local developer. Their plan is to redevelop the building into next-gen bioscience and technology space. It'll be a laboratory that's going to leverage all of the advantages and amenities along that area of the health tech corridor. Its plan is to cater to the educational and health institutions in the area, as well as try to foster and attract startups, grant-funded research, and the satellite lab needs of larger regional and national groups that currently can't find small spaces here in Northeast Ohio, and at times when a place like a bioenterprise might be full. The final price that was given by this group, their best and final price, and I want to make sure that in particular, as it regards evaluating the offers against one another, we all appreciate the effective price of the sale. The final price in this property, the effective price, was $2.5 million. There was no fee that was requested to be paid to an outside broker. There was an outside broker involved in representing CoLab. They agreed not to take a fee because at the end of the day, we made it clear to everybody that the net price after payment of any outside brokers would be the dollar amount upon which a decision would be made, because that would actually be the representation of the proceeds that would be available to both the county and the Board of Developmental Disabilities. The due diligence period on the property is already in progress with CoLab Partners. They were willing to make a commitment to start spending that time and money now, even though this is up for review and discussion by the council. And there's a 30-day closing. If all kind of goes according to the plan and schedules that's set out now, that closing would happen in February of 2018. There is a collaboration with BioEnterprise. It is somewhat unofficial, but they are working together to ensure that this is truly next-gen space. And as part of the process, this group proactively provided us with letters and expressions of support from the Midtown Corridor, or I should say Midtown Cleveland Executive Director, and the folks at the Health Tech Corridor. So this was reviewed. Now, not getting into the details of a timeline, but this was reviewed by the Cuyahoga County Board of Developmental Disabilities at their meeting on Thursday, October 26th, and it was deemed to be the highest and best proposal that was on the table. And we were given, immediately after that meeting, their resolution to recommend it to the Executive and County Council for review. There was a second purchaser, as you've heard, who was in negotiations with us the whole time. And obviously, there's a timeline and a back and forth in those negotiations. On October 11th, we were given what we were told was a best and final offer with an effective price after payment of that bidder's broker of just shy of $2.1 million. And that was the bid that was considered by the Board of Developmental Disabilities at the time of their meeting on the 26th. It's fair to say that that bid came after multiple rounds of negotiation with that group. At that point, the county and the Board of Developmental Disabilities already had an offer in hand for $2.5 million effective price. And subsequent to that resolution, we did receive another offer from that group. But again, its effective price was still technically below the $2.5 million number that you have in front of you today.
Okay, just as an aside, so getting back to the, I appreciate the presentation, and I think I have a good handle as to the negotiations that occurred with CoLab Partners, and it sounds to me like the usage for the property from CoLab Partners seems to be a very good potential use at that property. One of the issues, obviously, Mr. George is here this morning. Getting to this timeline, I just want to make sure that have an understanding. So the offer by CoLab Partners was formally accepted prior to any additional bid by Mr. George's firm company?
Well, so I think it's fair to say that the Board of Developmental Disabilities doesn't have the authority, as they don't own title to the property, to accept per se.
Okay.
But they did agree with the unanimous resolution to recommend the sale to that group based upon the offers that were in hand.
And so again, I'm just objectively trying to look at this. When you have 60, I think it was 62,500 left on the board, on the table. The reason for not going back and trying to negotiating further, just what was the thinking in those terms to try to get the highest amount?
Absolutely. So at the time that decision was made to move forward, and I could obviously defer to the folks of the Board of Developmental Disabilities who are here today, we did present that subsequent offer that came in after the resolution.
Okay.
Because obviously we're here to discuss and nothing has been, transferred or sold just yet.
Right.
We did present it to them, and the concern that they had on their part was that it wasn't truly $62,500 higher. That offer contemplated a payment to the buyer's broker that actually brought the net proceeds to the Board of Developmental Disabilities below the offer they already had in hand. That's point number one. Point number two was that there was a concern on the part of, with how negotiations had gone over the previous months, that you potentially risk losing or frustrating somebody if you are moving forward with their offer and then you don't move forward with their offer to accept one that isn't quite as high. The last thing I will say is that there's other non-sales price considerations that are worth taking into account. The group at CoLab agreed to use the county's purchase and sale agreement form, without modification, and we're willing to sign on to that. That's a reasonable consideration that the county had because they knew that they could move forward expeditiously, and their timing for due diligence and close was a little bit faster. They were willing to start doing diligence even prior to the county council taking a vote.
Okay. And I just want to say, before we proceed any further, I just want to make sure with law department, if you think we're getting into any areas that need to go into executive session, just please advise us as such. I think at this point, we're still okay, and these are just negotiations that we're talking about here, but,
Yeah, the executive session would have to be noted on the agenda, so
Okay.
I don't think that option is available at this time.
okay, that's not, yeah, that wasn't my understanding, but I just, because I was told that because it was a sale of real property through a competitive bid, we didn't have to necessarily have it on the agenda if need be, but, well, we'll just try to keep our discussion, limited to what's available in public here, so, okay, any questions from my colleagues?
So our advice from council is that if we open into a dialogue that you feel is inappropriate without giving notice that we're going to go into executive session, that we can't go into executive session of this body?
That's what the rules of council say, yes.
What I'm asking you is your legal opinion if we go into that. You're saying that rules of council will control over the state's control regards to executive session as to when the sunshine law and doesn't apply.
I am saying that if you decide to go in executive session, it would have to be noted on the agenda, and because that is not the case, that executive session would have to happen at your next committee hearing.
Okay, well, if that's the advice we're getting from council. We have other attorneys up here, but I'm not going to suggest try to get engaged in that. You're our counsel in regards to this. So, in the event that we go into areas that is uncomfortable, the only way is to suspend this matter and bring it back at a later time.
Well,
if there's executive session material that.
Well, Mr. Strong, I think one of the options is we can vote to suspend the rules of council and go into executive session.
Oh, yeah, that's certainly your call.
Yeah, and I think at this juncture, I think that would probably be the appropriate thing to do.
No other public bodies that I've sat on, if we get into an area that is uncomfortable, that
Yeah, because
executive
I mean,
session-
this is dealing with the sale of property through a competitive bid, and you know, I think there's maybe some sensitive areas that we need to discuss in executive session. So I would make a motion to suspend rules of council to allow us to go into executive session.
I'll second that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Mr. Miller.
I don't recommend this course of action.
Okay.
I'm with the law department. The county adopted the state's regime on public meetings into our ordinances, and I don't think we have the power to go contrary to our codified ordinances by suspending the rules. And even if I'm wrong about that, I wouldn't want to chance even the appearance of a sunshine law violation. I think if we feel we need to go into executive session, that we should schedule a meeting on another day and properly notice an executive session.
Thank you for your comments, Councilman Miller. I'll withdraw my motion.
I'll withdraw the second if the chair wants to withdraw it, but
I just for the record, I do believe we have the right to do so, to suspend the rules and go into executive sessions, but for purposes of having this laid out here for the public and trying to get this thing resolved amicably in the public eye, I'll defer to Mr. Miller on this, and we'll ask questions and just be careful of what is asked and how it's worded. That's all. Ms. Baker?
Yes, and given the
just
circumstances.
if I would, you indicated that all parties signed a non-disclosure agreement at the very beginning of this entire process.
Well, in order to access information, so simply to talk to us or walk through the property during an open house, that was not necessarily a requirement. But in order to access certain levels of information that were embedded in our website, yes, there was a confidentiality and waiver.
Is there everything that you've been part of this, has it now been waived as far as the confidentiality?
Has confidentiality been waived?
Is everything that you've opened up to and that Mr. George has talked about, is that all public record information at this point in time? Are we about ready to move into stuff that's covered by that confidentiality agreement they signed?
So it was made clear to everybody, and it's actually on the front page of our RFP, that at the time that a sale is being recommended to council for review and potential approval, that things are made public, that information is made public. The one thing that I would defer to council on, and frankly, out of deference to Mr. George to be a good partner in this, is to say, I don't know if the back and forth of negotiations is something that you'd want to put out. If I were Mr. George, I don't know that I'd want necessarily my various bids at different times put out, but if he's comfortable with that, then we can put that out there. I want to be.
Sure, I don't, yeah,
About transparency.
yeah, no, Mr. George,
Book that I gave you.
yeah.
They're not about transparency.
Yeah, Mr. George.
They're about cloak and dagger.
Mr. George, I'd ask that you just respect the process and not speak out in the crowd. And I understand, this is something that disturbs you and upsets you, and we're trying to make sure that the process is followed correctly here. So appreciate your cooperation with that. Mr. Schron, I think you and I are going down the same path. If there's negotiations that are behind the scenes that we're private negotiations, we certainly don't want to disrupt the confidentiality of such. But if you're okay with discussing that background, then that's your prerogative to do so. Are there any further questions from the Mr. Miller or Ms. Baker? Are there any further questions from the committee regarding the contract here, Mr. Miller? I'm sorry, Ms. Baker. I'm sorry.
I guess I'm just going to suggest that because of the uncertainty, and I think there is a level of uncertainty here, that we not vote on this today and that we postpone this until our next Public Works Committee to give us a chance to, if needed, put this on the agenda as an executive session and follow through on the correct process.
Sure. Mr. Miller, you have a comment?
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
And if I don't think these are questions that there's any problem with their being discussed publicly, but if it is, someone can bring that to my attention. The first question is about the process, and I'm fuzzy about how it's defined when the time period ends as to when an offer can be made, and my question is whether there was any point in the process where any prospective bidders were told that all offers have to be received by such and such a date in order to be considered, and that offers received after that date will not be considered. Was there anything like that part of the process, or was this an open-ended process where there was no firm deadline put out?
So the initial call for offers was on July 26th. That was an initial deadline to receive in offers. 2 offers were brought in, both of which were parties that were the same 2 offers we were contemplating, but revised at the end of our process in late October. So, and I would again defer to the county's legal counsel as to what you are and are not allowed to do under your charter. But my understanding from having worked with you in the past to sell property is that you are able to negotiate offers. You've given yourself the right through your charter that you rewrote a few years back to negotiate offers in order to provide the county and its partners with the benefit of the best possible outcomes in the sale of real estate, and that those negotiations can happen, and at times, in order to really give you the best possible outcome, must happen confidentially, because there are backs and forths, and if you have groups that are competing against one another, you can't have them knowing what the other group is bidding, per se. After the process is over, it all becomes public record so that everybody can know, and nothing is finalized or transferred until county council agrees that the process and the outcome were appropriate.
So, are you saying that the time at which the legislation was submitted to county council is kind of the deadline, because that's when everything became public?
Well, I know that at the time it's submitted, it becomes public. Whether or not you would call that the deadline would be a different question, but.
Suppose a new offer were received today. Since no sale has been consummated yet, could a new offer be received today and be considered?
So as your agent, I am obligated to present you with any offer that is received, which we've done, and kind of go through them with you and your legal counsel, and take your direction as to how you'd like to proceed and respond to such offers. So the answer to your question is yes. We are required to receive and present any offer that comes in until that property transfers. And I think that it's ultimately up to the county, not CBRE, to make the determination as to how they respond, because at this point, having worked with a couple of groups, who are both very interested in the property, I think you have to appreciate the risks both ways about each decision you make going forward.
And Mr. Chairman, my other question is you presented the idea that the final offer received from the second bidder, Mr. George, was less than the offer from the first bidder, if you take into account the brokerage payment. Mm-hmm. And Mr. George did not seem to agree with that, and if I may, I would like to give Mr. George an opportunity to tell us why he believes that his offer is $62,500 higher than the offer that's currently on the table, because there seems to be a dispute here over the facts. So if that's permitted, I would like to do that.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. One thing I don't want to do, I don't want to renegotiate contracts that the county has already negotiated. That's my only concern. If we're looking at try to get timelines and things like that.
Mr. Chairman, it would be the farthest thing on my mind to want to negotiate anything from here. I only want to try to establish what the facts are, and there seems to be a dispute as to the facts as to this particular point. And I had a math teacher in grade school that sometimes students would give two different answers to the same problem, and the teacher would say they can't both be right. So I'd like to hear what Mr. George has to say on this.
Would it be
not a problem? Yeah, Mr. If you could just state your name for the record.
Sorry. Good morning. I'm Kelly Petty, Superintendent and CEO of the Board of Developmental Disabilities. Just want to reiterate that the Board of Developmental Disabilities did unanimously approve the offer made by the CoLab partners. But as Mr. Jeffers explained, with the really what they approved was taking it before County Council for your approval. And that was on October 26th. Just also wanted to indicate the building is vacant at this time. We vacated that building on at the end of August, August 28th. And it had been our hope that we could move forward with a vote at your November 28th meeting, just because we want to limit the amount of time that that building is vacant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
As long as she's on the, as long as you walked up and grabbed the microphone, would you have any problem if, at least as I understand the concept, and I'm going to challenge, I'm going to ask more questions about the concept, but if the Development and Disability Board, and I'll defer back to my colleague, if you receive $62,000 more, would that be a problem with you? If it should
No.
turn out? Okay,
No, of course not.
Okay, thanks. I just.
Okay, Mr. Miller, you,
Yes, I would like to hear Mr. George's response on the
Okay.
offer.
okay, Mr. George, you've heard from the county on this now, with the Board of Developmental Disabilities on this, so.
Okay, as I said earlier, I've given a timeline
Right,
in a
and
book
for the
where all
record,
the.
yeah, for the record,
all
we
the-
do have a timeline for
Okay.
Mr. George with some
So if you
information.
go to page 65, there's an email from my broker
65.
to Jeffrey Ryans
I
and
do
George
not have-
Stevens.
I do
not have
have this.
You know what, if we could get
Here's another one.
Mr. Miller and Mr. Schron, I believe, needs one too.
Well, I only have two.
Okay,
I'll
okay.
give it to over
Well,
here.
that's fine, we could share. It's a tight
Find
budget.
the page.
Okay, 62, 62, okay.
Right there. I'll give it to him. Just show him that right here.
Okay, Mr.
So on
George,
page
we're all here.
65, there's an email from Joe Zampano, my broker, saying, okay, I appreciate your support on the fee, but would not want a fee to get in the way of the deal. So what my broker was saying was, hey, you don't have to pay him the fee. I'll pay him the fee. Okay? This is what I'm talking about, misinformation and steering this bidding process towards a buyer who they want to buy it rather than me, who I want to buy. And by the way, let's talk about my use. My use is we have a company called Apex Transit Solutions. We transport veterans with disabilities. We also transport people with developmental disabilities. I have 60 jobs that I want to keep in Cuyahoga County, and we just picked up another contract. We want to expand to 100 jobs. My use is the perfect use for this building. We use it as it's been used. My point is, if you're going to be the county and you're using my tax dollars and you're going to say, I like what Councilman Dale Miller said, what's the process here? It wasn't clear. We, as buyers, didn't have a clear process. You got two bidders, sit them at the table and let them go at it. The only one going to benefit is the county. So my bid is $2,562,000. I'll take care of the broker. That's $62,500 more than their bid.
Okay.
And as I said, nobody cares more about the developmental disability, people with developmental disabilities than myself. I have a son with Down syndrome. My wife and I fund the Michael T. George Center. We house residents with adult residents with Down syndrome. We have the first Down syndrome research clinic at University Hospital, Case Western Reserve, that my wife and I fund. So I don't want to hear no baloney here. All I want to hear is transparency, honesty, and openness. What's the secretness? Who cares who's bidding on the building? I don't care that anybody knows I'm bidding, and I don't care that anybody knows what I bid. Why does CoLab and the county and CBRS want to keep all this secret? What's the secret here? This is a public building that's owned by us as taxpayers. Let's get the most we can for it. Bring CoLab in here now. Let's go at it. They want the building. The worst scenario is the county makes more money. That's where I'm at.
Okay.
Now, hold on. I'm not done yet.
Well, wait, hold on
Since
one
I had
second.
the opportunity,
All right, Mr.
you gave
George.
me the opportunity. I want to finish.
Yeah, no, Mr. George, I was just going to ask my colleagues if they had any questions to this point for you. I think that'd be a fair time to stop and ask. Any questions?
You answered my question.
Okay, and Mr. Schron?
Yeah, the only, this email of October 12th, it appears to have gone to Mr. Jeffries directly from your organization. So
The same Mr. Jeffries that was up here saying
Is there a
that he didn't know about this.
was there a response at that time regarding asking for clarity on whether you would cover or not cover the brokerage fees?
Good question.
Was there a follow-up as to you were willing to say you would waive the brokerage fees? Was there any follow-up from Mr. Jeffries in regards to that?
The whole email, for transparency, I told my broker, I want the entire email thread to be put in this book.
Okay.
So we didn't hide nothing. We're not mincing words here. I also wanted all of his texting between George Stevens and him, which is at the back of this book, which when you read the texting, you'll understand that we would have done whatever we needed to do to get the building. And they never came back to us and said, hey, CoLab bid 2.5 million, you need to be at 2.6 million. They didn't do that, because if they would have, I would have been there.
Yeah,
And this is, and just so you know, I appreciate the work all of you do. This is the kind of stuff that makes residents and taxpayers feel like they can't trust their government.
Yeah, I'm just trying to follow the string. The string came from Mr. Jeffries to you, then you responded shortly thereafter, within less than 10 minutes, saying that the fees were not something that was going to get in the way. Was there a response to your 410? I hate to feel like I'm back in a courtroom, but I don't see a response that follows that.
Right.
And we can ask Mr. Jeffries whether
October 20th, if you go to page 79, there's another email. In an effort to learn how we can accomplish this deal, we need some feedback. We weren't getting feedback from the broker. If I were you, I'd fire the broker. What do you got a broker for that's not trying to get the most money for the deal?
Mr. George, I think what the councilman's asking for is in that chain from that afternoon, was there a response?
You need to read this. Okay?
I'm trying to follow along.
When he said that to me, my blood started to boil, and I found that email.
Joe, thanks.
Okay? So when he's talking about the brokerage fee, like we weren't willing to not go with the brokerage fee, I told my broker, I'll pay you the fee. Just bid 2.625 and let's be done with it.
Where did that number come from, the 2.562?
From us.
No, I mean,
Their number was 2.7.
Mr. George, anywhere in your emails did you indicate these are my best and final offers? Did you ever say this is my final offer or this is my best? So the negotiators on the other side.
Look, here's what I'm telling you. There needs to be an investigation about this whole process. Okay. If you move forward with the sale, I'm giving you my word, there will be a lawsuit. And by the way, I want it on the record right now. I want all emails, texting, documentation, any kind of thing dealing with 7001 Euclid preserved from the broker, from your agents, from the county, and from the Board of Developmental Disabilities. I want them preserved. I want it on the record right now. Because my lawyers will be sending everybody, including Armin Budish, a letter today asking for that preservation. So either we deal with this in a proper manner, or it's not going to happen anyways, because I'm going to stop it in court.
Okay, appreciate your comments. Anything further from council for Mr. George?
not for me. But
I want to finish my statement that he interrupted me on.
Well, first of all, I don't think I interrupted you. I was asking my colleagues whether they had questions for you.
Any
so
more
I think
questions?
that's part of the process, Mr. George.
I got it. I get it.
Before,
Listen, I'm upset. And
I know.
You don't understand why I'm upset. I'm going to explain it to you.
No,
My family, when you put up your last set of buildings, we bid on a Courthouse Square building. All those other buildings were put up for sale.
Right.
Every building was sold except that one. We won the bid and we scored the highest in the points.
Right. Right.
Can you answer that question for me?
Well, I can't because I wasn't here.
Okay. So here's why I feel this way right now. I
understand.
Let's focus
on this issue here.
Okay.
I understand.
I let that one go. I'm not letting this one go.
That's fine. Okay. You want to finish up with?
That's what I wanted to tell you.
Okay. All
Some
right.
of the council people up here are aware of that deal.
Okay.
They know it was a raw deal to the George family.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. If there's nothing further,
Mr. Jeffries now, based on.
yeah, I'd like to, yeah,
Would be
that's fine.
appropriate, I think.
Yeah, I think so. We'll hear from Mr. Jeffries. I just wanted to respond to some of Mr. George's comments.
No,
No, that's fine, Mr. George. Thank you.
Mr. Jeffries has come up and.
Mr. Jeffries? Or Jeffers? Is it Jeffers?
Jeffers, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Jeffers.
That's okay. That's
Sorry
okay.
about that.
I wasn't going to say
know who I
anything.
was talking to. Okay.
Okay, appreciate that.
No problem.
If you could just, respond to some of Mr. George's comments. I mean, they're fair questions.
They absolutely are. And I feel awful because obviously in a situation like this, I think it's probably good to kind of remind everybody what the role of a CBRE is in a process like this, similar to the role that Mr. George's broker from Hoff and Lee played in the process. We are the go-betweens, and we are also not the folks making decisions. So when we talk about who responded or when, we're more mouthpieces. Counters that come from us, obviously we're involved in the discussion of putting those together, but those aren't our counters. We don't own that property. We don't vote to approve or not approve the decision to sell it to somebody. That comes from the county and our contact, and that is their legal counsel. So there are times during a negotiation where you can appreciate if there are lags, it's simply, and on both sides, there are periods of time where, we may not be getting feedback from a buyer. And we don't put that on them necessarily, except to say that the buyer is working with their broker to figure out an appropriate response.
Okay.
Probably the best way to respond to Mr. George's comments is to give you a quick rundown of a timeline of correspondence and offers. But I do want to be respectful and make sure, Mr. George, you're okay with if we were to do that.
I gave it to him already.
Fantastic.
You got it. I just want to know why you guys didn't get back to us.
And again, Mr. George, if you could speak at the podium. Mr. George, if you could speak at the podium so it's picked up on the record. I can't hear you from back there. Okay. You have permission to move forward with discussing the timeline.
So thank you. And I'll try to be brief because I know you've got a full agenda today, but this is important. The first offer that we received from the George Group to acquire the property was made on July 26th. Remember, when we talk about effective price, we talk about the price after any payment of costs that are unique to that particular buyer's proposal. So in this case, it would be the buyer's broker. The effective price of that first offer on July 26th was $1.17 million. It had an earnest money of $25,000. That net price is after the deduction of a 2.5% fee to the buyer's broker. And the use, as you've heard, was for offices for the George Group and their Apex Transit Solution Group.
Rather than get involved in that or July 26th.
Okay.
All offers on July 26th were rejected. Is that?
Yes.
At least I think I heard. So I don't personally. So if all offers have been rejected, I don't really care about the other 10 offers that came in. If none of them are accepted, his got rejected along with everybody else's.
Both were sent identical emails on August 2nd. You're right. And after that identical rejection, both groups continued to pursue the property. Both groups said, we really like the property. We really want to come after it.
Both groups understood that this was now a free-form bidding process?
Yep. There were no deadlines, that we had the flexibility to operate.
Back to Mr. Miller's question, there were no deadlines after the July 26th rejection?
At that time and place, there were no deadlines.
Okay.
We were continuing to market and show the property, obviously.
Yeah.
But at that point, we didn't have somebody who had an offer on the table that was exceptional or worth really pursuing. And frankly, we didn't want to offend people if we were that far apart in the numbers, because we were thinking of a number closer to where you ended up. On August 31st, and it did take some time because the Board of Developmental Disabilities in the county wanted to really evaluate how they wanted to respond. On August 31st, we countered to both parties because both were pursuing and both wanted a response more so than, we're done here. So we responded to both groups that the effective price would be $2.7 million. And at the time, we communicated to everybody that that effective price meant after the deduction of brokerage fees for the outside broker representing the buyer. On the 12th of September, a couple weeks later, the George Group did respond. They came back with an improved offer. Their effective price was $1.55 million. There were a couple of strange changes. Their brokerage fee increased to 3% at that time, and their earnest money went down to 10%. They provided a form purchase and sale agreement that was not the county's form. And at that time, we were also, right around that same time frame, we were also getting another response from the other bidder. On the 22nd of September, the CBRE countered to the George Group and indicated, we're still looking for that $2.7 million number. That's our counter. And that we would need to go back to the seller's purchase and sale agreement, which had been provided to all the bidders on the website. On the 22nd of September, actually very, very quickly, to their credit, the George Group came back with an effective price of $1.94 million. Again, a 3% fee to the buyer's broker, and confirmed in the correspondence that that was their final and best offer. This was their third offer with an effective price of $1.94 million, and we were told by the broker that it was their final and best offer. At that stage, we want to be clear that CBRE already had in hand a proposal from CoLab Partners for $2.42 million at that point. That's a significant gap between the offers that we had in hand in late September. In spite of that, we went back to the George Group to give them an opportunity to try to get the best outcome for the county. And on October 6th, we indicated that we would be willing to counter at $2.562,500.
Excuse me, Mr. Jeffers, again, I just want to, pose to the law department, are we still okay with these discussions that are going on in public with the sale and negotiation process with the county?
I have to say that I did not provide legal advice on this transaction, so I would invite Joe Boatwright to give his legal opinion.
We're okay? Okay. Thank you. You can continue. Okay. And again, I hope everybody here appreciates the nature of why I'm asking these questions, and it's not to hide any process or deal with sunshine laws. I'm just trying to get to the truth, but we also want to respect the negotiation process that the county engages in, and the privacy.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make sure the record just reflects that somebody spoke from out in the audience. That person that says we're okay was
right. Mr. Boatwright indicated we're okay to proceed, so we're on the record with that. Okay, thank you. You can continue.
Pardon me. So the response on October 6th, Mr. George had indicated that the $2,562,000 number had come from the George Group. That was actually submitted by CBRE. The purpose of that number not being a more round number is because we were trying to get to a net $2.5 million price, which at that time would have been higher than the competing offer. And we were willing to pay his broker $62,500 as part of the transaction because it had been made clear to us that they were going to be a part of the deal at that time. On the 11th of...
What was the date of that? That was the 11th?
That was the 6th.
6th, okay.
That we made that response. On the 11th, the George Group responded with their fourth offer on the property. It was a price of about $2.15 million. They reduced the fee to the buyer's broker to 2.5%. So the effective price and proceeds to the county and board at that point would have been $2,096,250. Again, not commenting on other terms such as earnest money or the terms of the PSA. And in that correspondence on October 11th, the representative of the George Group confirmed that they were authorized to present only one last offer on the matter, that the price that they were putting out at $2.15 million was above their ceiling. And we were told clearly that the George Group could not get to the price that the county was countering at, which was that $2.562 million number, and that they did not feel the building justified that price.
So the 2.562 came from your presentation to them?
Yes, that was in an effort to...
I was just trying to get to, if you heard me earlier ask, where did that number come from? It came from your office then in regards to it. Okay.
Trying to accommodate their broker.
It's okay. I just wanted to make sure I knew where that number originated from.
Yep. On the 12th of October, there was some correspondence with the agent from Hoff and Lee regarding their fee. And the agent at that time did send the email that Mr. George referred to where he indicated, well, yeah, we want to get paid, but we don't want it to get in the way of a deal, which was kind of a very non-committal response that we got. We did clear it up. Admittedly, we did it through a phone conversation and just asked him, how do you want us to look at this? Because we reminded him that all offers were being considered net of any fee paid to a buyer's broker. And at that time, he said, pay me, as long as it doesn't cost me the deal. At that time, they were offering $2.15 million when we had an offer in hand for $2.5 million. That would not have cost him the deal. Considering that we were told 2 times by the George Group that it was their best and final offer, and they were given very specific feedback about being above their ceiling, and that they could not go any higher, and that they didn't feel the building justified the price, the Board of Developmental Disabilities at their next available meeting, it did take a little bit of time because their next available meeting was on the 26th of October. That next meeting, they discussed the sale and they agreed to move forward with the CoLab Partners offer at an effective price of $2.5 million versus the offer from the George Group, which, whether you characterize it with or without the fee as of that time, was $2,096,000 or $2.15 million. On the
As of what time? As of the October 26th meeting?
Yeah, as of the October 26th meeting, and we felt that we had been clearly told by the agent representing the George Group that they were done. Absolutely. We were told twice, in fact. On the 27th, that meeting on the 26th was held in the evening. On the 27th, legal counsel for the Board of Developmental Disabilities submitted to us the resolution that they had passed. We reached out and notified the George Group that they were going in a different direction with the sale of the property, and that all other offers were being withdrawn. On October 30th, the 5th offer came in from the George Group, which basically said the $2,562,500 is the sale price. It was, again, a purchase and sale agreement that was on the buyer's form. It wasn't the county's form that we had told all buyers they would have to agree to. And it did outline on that form a 2.5% fee to the buyer's broker very clearly in the brokerage section. So the net effective price of that being just shy of $2.5 million. It was presented to the county. The county and the Board of Developmental Disabilities discussed and decided at that point they had an offer in hand. Technically, it was higher, that they did not want to respond or continue the negotiation, that they wanted to sell the building. At that point, it was vacant. They were going into winter. They didn't want to risk losing a buyer at the table or risk any physical issues with the property.
Okay, any questions from my colleagues? Ms. Baker?
So just to clarify, thank you. The George Group or their representatives that are on the record for saying that their offer of $2.5 million with all fees not to be deducted from that is a false statement?
Well, in my opinion, given kind of the nature of the process we're in, that I would consider their 6th offer as of today. That was not, as of our understanding, and we have very clear documentation to support this, that was not the offer that was made on October 30th, nor was it the offer that was made earlier in October on the 11th, which was the offer upon which the Board of Disabilities met and discussed and made their recommendation.
If I may follow.
Yes.
But as stated earlier, there is no deadline. So negotiations are as open as they were the first day the bids went out. What consideration did you give at that point when you received a higher offer that did not include any fees to be deducted?
Well, I mean, in my opinion, and I do not mean to be sounding silly when I say it, what I'm saying is that I believe that the statement that was made today by Mr. George is that offer, that is their 6th offer on the property. I certainly have not yet had an opportunity to discuss with our client. We don't choose the direction in the response, but as of today, that would be a new offer, in our opinion.
That's a new offer.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Baker. Any other questions from members of council for Mr. Jeffers?
Yes, I think you indicated there are two groups that are very interested in this property. If I'm quoting, I think were almost exactly what you said a few minutes ago, the previous time. In your experience as being somebody who works in this field, if that is the case, is there an opportunity for the taxpayers to get more money if there are two interested parties that are still interested? Now, I do realize, and I'll caveat it, that people sometimes when they get into this kind of public information, that's why it sometimes takes place in closed environment in a executive session. When it gets public like this, somebody walks away saying, hey, I'm done with this because I didn't look forward to this kind of scrutiny. But assuming that there are still two interested parties after this public laundering of information, in your experience, does that help or hurt the seller to have two people that really want a piece of property?
Well, I will say this is not a typical experience.
I understand
Yeah.
that. But the selling guy,
Right.
Let's remove everything else that took place and just stay with that question right there.
Right. It is always better to have more people interested in a property who really would like to have it and are continuing to pursue it. That's certainly true.
And
There's
both
nothing.
And both which have said that they are going to hit your 2.5 million minimum, at least at this point in time.
Yeah, ostensibly, assuming like what you said, that both would stay engaged in the conversation.
I understand that people, when public laundering takes place, that's why it's recommended to have real estate conversation. As you know, you've been in,
Right.
take place in executive session before. So, well, okay.
Yeah, how you respond is all personal to the buyer.
Absolutely. And the buyer.
I'm sorry, is all personal to the seller.
I know what you meant. And CCBDD is not the seller.
They are not technically the seller, but
They're only going to be the third party beneficiary under this agreement where they're going to receive the proceeds of it. So
they receive the proceeds,
it's
right?
ultimately the county who is the seller, and that's why it's being done in a public forum right now. So at least I think when Mr. Miller asked you, our bid's still open right to this minute, and your answer was yes. So it's kind of, this is the craziest one I've ever been involved with in the 7 years being on board.
Are you sure? We did a lot of crazy ones.
We did some crazy ones, but this is really crazy.
Is up there.
This is right up there.
So
I'm done asking the question. I mean, you're free to respond, but
yeah, my response in your last point is that I'm talking about, what our obligations are as your representative. We're obligated to present offers until you consummate a sale. How they're responded to is a different matter. But we have and will and always will present offers and talk through how you best, proceed with them.
putting my business hat on, I would assume that 2.562 is a number that we should be looking at to get no less than that from this point forward as an organization. So it just seems to me that it would be. I know that the Public Works is advocating that we go into an auction process on other procurement activities, and is being advocated for other parts of this procurement side, but that's on the reduction side. But this is just almost the flip side. This is the auction process on the sales side.
Yeah.
Which, yeah.
At this point, I think you weigh any response you have will weigh, the risks and rewards of, the next steps.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Baker.
Only to add that if this is certainly, and maybe this might be something to reflect upon for other negotiations, but if there is in fact no deadline, and if today is an active day for continuing to negotiate the price of this property, then 2.562, I believe, is what's on the table, could increase. We go back to CoLab.
It depends on if that's what you'd like to do. I just think you have to appreciate that what you run the risk of is somebody walking away out of frustration. And I'm not at this moment saying one way or the other, but our job is to advise. That's certainly something, as to Councilman Schron's point, it's better to have multiple people at the table, because when you don't have that upward momentum in improving the offer economically or otherwise.
If I may continue, is there any reason for you to think that the offer on the table for 2.562 is not an offer that you can accept and that you would lose if you were to release CoLab of their 2.5 and won't go any higher and walked away?
I can't accept any offer I can't accept any offer on behalf of the county. I know that sounds like I'm being a little deflective, but it's just the fact. It's not my job to accept or reject on your behalf.
Right, I get that.
Okay, thank you.
Only this body can accept.
I understand, but I just said, it sounds like, I'm sorry. I understand that it just sounds like this is still an active negotiation that it has no
Sure.
deadline.
I guess my question might be to maybe Ms. Petty with the board, as far as what the recommendation was for council with the additional information. I mean, is that something that the board would reconsider as far as accepting a higher bid?
Yes, we will consider it. I'll have to consult with our legal counsel and also with our board members, but yes.
Okay. Mr. Strawn?
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to put that other junior hat on. Has there been any steps or any action taken by the individual bidder who put forth a 2.5 to change their direction to actually do any improvements or do any enhancements ahead of this body approving it? Have they gone in and done any leasehold or any improvements in the property?
No, just looking, looking.
Okay.
And they
I
wouldn't.
want to make sure there was no money being expended on their half in anything. Thank you.
Well, they are not able to make improvements without holding title to the property. That's certainly not the case. They are, though, spending money
Right.
on the due diligence investigations.
Okay. If everyone wouldn't mind, I mean, I obviously this seems like this is an unusual situation. It seems like it's still a fluent situation. I would, if my council colleagues would agree, I'd like to hold this in committee and hold it for further discussion, and then the board can do its due diligence with your broker and with the parties involved who are making their bids, and then come back when you feel more comfortable with what's being presented. If my colleagues don't have any objection, I'd make a motion to hold this in committee. And again, I hope Mr. George understands that this is part of the process, and this is the openness in which we're trying to do this whole thing. So you have a comment? You could come up and say something.
I do. I'm glad you're doing this, and I appreciate it. But moving forward,
Into the mic, please.
because I'm okay with my company being transparent. My bid's 2.5 million, 600, or 2.562,500. We'll take care of our own broker moving forward. Now, if they want to counter, if Colabs wants to counter, you can't come back to me and say, hey, they beat your bid. That's why we were at where we're at. They got to come back to me and say, hey, Colab countered at 2.6 million. Do you want to beat that? Then that's how you get in the bidding process. This is why this is what I'm talking about, is transparency and openness. We're talking about a government property that's owned by the citizens of Cuyahoga County. Why all the secrecy? If a company doesn't want to be open about it, they shouldn't participate in the bidding process. This is my point.
Okay, no, I appreciate
That's
the
my
comments.
bid.
Yeah.
I'm willing. If Colabs wants to counter, let them counter. But I need to know the number.
Okay, appreciate your comments.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Miller?
Just a comment. I know what was attempted to be done here, but I do think that the process is murky and
Yeah.
unclear, and it sounds to me like one of two things needs to be done. Either
Has to be a final best because it's not fair to the board.
if you don't decide that the process was basically closed and you're going ahead with the offer that was on the table, if you don't do that, I think you either need to have some kind of an open auction process where the two bidders and anybody else, if anybody else is interested, gathers together in a room and they say, the conditions are the following: you got to use the county's order form. You got to do this. You got to do that. Whatever your conditions are, and you take care of your own broker's fee, and and what's the final number? What am I bid? And you auction it back and forth until everybody but one gives up, and so that's one option. And the other option is you basically do the same thing, and you do it, but you do it on a sealed bid basis, and you say anyone who's interested, you have until such and such a date to submit it in writing, and then and the deadline's the same for everybody, and then you have a bid opening, and either way you have a process that's fair to all parties, and you can determine a winner. So that's my thought.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I think that there has to be a process with a deadline. I mean, you're going to have people running into council meetings, hopefully not, but you know, without a deadline, you can accept offers until we literally, you know, put forward the resolution on the agenda. And the other thing I would ask Mr. George, you know, is that 2.6. I'm sorry, I'm going to get that right. The 2,562,500 is that, you know, your best and final offer? Is that, you know, something on the record that you're saying willing to say yes? I, you know, put that out there for now.
Mr. Tuma, with all due respect, I'm a businessman. We're in an open forum.
Sure.
If I say that's my best and final offer,
Okay, no,
Colabs
that's
will
fair.
come in with 2.575, okay?
Right.
Here's what I'm saying to you. That's my offer now. If Colab wants to come back in with another offer, let me know what that is, and I'll tell you if I'm going to beat it.
That's fair enough. But one of the things I have to say from your email correspondence,
Right.
just being an attorney looking at it, I'm not
Right.
giving you legal advice in any way, shape, or form. But these things, these are open to multiple interpretations, in my opinion.
I agree, but
very
look at-
specific, very
look-
clear. Have your
I-
attorney look this stuff over and do his job.
Scott, look at the texting, okay, where
Yeah.
my broker keeps telling them, what's it going to take to get the deal done? You can't bid against a ghost. We got to know what the bids are, so it's good for the county. When I sell one of my buildings, it goes up for auction.
Sure.
We let them bid against each other. What's the problem here of who knows who's bidding and what the bid is? I don't like the secrecy stuff. We're going back to the Arc Ages. Okay? Open and transparent government. That's what I'm for.
No, I appreciate that.
Good government.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, Mr. Schron?
Yeah, I think my concern is that one of the reasons why there is a sunshine law that allows real estate to be a unique item is that you don't necessarily have all public airing of this, because does it restrict that? And I know that the Board of Development and Disabilities wants to get a conclusion, because their response is they need to have a deadline. So I think we need to make sure that whatever we do has a deadline of some certain, and it will have to have. I think that again, the falling back on past practices is that we can have it with reserves, and we clearly have an established number that's publicly been put on the record of $2,562,000 with reserve.
Right.
And any number below that, you would just make you $62,000, hopefully at the close, which would be advantageous. And I realize that this is not the way you make sausage, unfortunately.
Right. Couldn't agree more.
This is the way you make sausage.
Well, it is the way you make sausage.
It's just not a pretty process what went on.
Pretty. Ms. Conwell?
Through the chair, apologize for my lateness. What was the building appraised at?
The building appraisal, what was the building appraised at, Mr. Jeffers?
So in the same vein of how we conducted the sales of your property a few years back, there was not a formal appraisal that was conducted of the property, but rather CBRE was providing evaluations and comparables of sales of similar properties in the area, full-blown appraisal, and that cost was not a requirement of the county process, nor did we think that it would be as instructive of value for the property as the outcome of true negotiations, which are really what a buyer is willing to buy for and a seller is willing to sell for.
So how do we know if we're making a good deal? What was the?
So we've provided a number of comps and sales comps that You can review for properties in that area of that property type of that comparable size. I will tell you that 2.5 or a little bit over 2.5 exceeds the comps that you will see for that area. Again, I don't have them here with me. I apologize, and I don't think it would be a good use of your time to go through them all now, but this is a good number.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Conwell. Mr. Schron?
Yeah, based on Ms. Conwell's, the big difference, though, between the comps and what would have taken place before and where we are today is we just approved, just fairly recently, the tire organization improvement for their garage that just went into Discount Tire, which is very close to there. We got involved with the 59.
Link 59.
Link 59, which we just approved, all of which are very close, all of which are going to improve that neighborhood, all of which would not be reflected in past comps.
And this will be your first comp. This sale will be the first comp since those things happen.
It will be. And so past comps, like you said, this is probably setting a new market value for this area.
It'll certainly be improving the
other
values
two,
in the area.
I mean, Discount Tire, they put their world headquarters there at that location, so that really improves the neighborhood.
If I may, and I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to cover in particular, but I know that we're gonna go after this meeting, and we're gonna talk to the county, we're gonna talk to the Board of Developmental Disabilities about next steps. We know we've heard here today. I would offer up that it's important for council to remember that the purpose of your process is to give you flexibility to do what you think gives you the best outcome. As Mr. Schron said, multiple bidders helps improve the outcome. A public auction runs a high risk of meaning that you lose a bidder and that you're stuck with any bidder that was at the table before. Remember, we were talking about bids that started in the range of $1 million, $1.1 million, $1.2 million. And now we're talking about 2.5. I would argue, given our comments about the comps in the area and the process that we've been through and where we're ending up, that this process has indeed resulted in a much higher value than an open air auction would. Now, that's not to say that we won't do something here in the coming days, but I would ask that you all consider that there are, whether it's an open air auction, a sealed bid process, a traditional negotiation of back and forth, there are many ways to sell property, and you have to look at each one and how it would, potentially provide you the outcome you're looking for and the process you're looking for. Lastly, I think it's worth saying that I don't want you to misconstrue my statements earlier where I was trying to be correct about our role. We are obligated. Ms. Baker had asked, what was the deadline? What was the timeline? We're obligated to present offers. We're obligated to present offers up until the day you vote. So I don't want you to misconstrue that as me saying this was always left open-ended. Bidders knew that we were talking to the Board of Developmental Disabilities and the county, that we were having meetings, and that we were going in to compare competing offers for review and approval or counter. They knew that going along the way. So I don't want it to be thought that everybody was left out in a vacuum and not truly aware of the process. Again, I think that the process has led you to a pretty good place, and look forward to getting this wrapped up on yours and the Board of Developmental Disabilities' behalf in the coming weeks.
Okay, and obviously the goal here is to do what's best for the county, and I think in some strange way we might end up there. If I could have a motion then to hold this.
I think it's Chair, you're allowed to hold it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry. I didn't know I had that much power here.
Oh, yeah, you're
okay.
the
Then I will I will make a motion to hold this in committee here and allow you folks to work out the details of the process.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your time. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. Only 8 more to go now. All right. All right. If we could, Madam Clerk, second matter referred to committee.
Resolution number 2017-0200, authorizing a purchase and sale agreement with Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority in the amount of $3,800,000 for the property commonly known as the Harvard Garage located at 2501 Harvard Road, Newburgh Heights.
Okay, if you could please state your name for the record and what this resolution is about.
Good morning, members of council. Michael Dever, Department of Public Works, here to present on item number 0200 and also 0201. I'm sorry, that wasn't referenced, but I suppose we'll get to that.
Okay.
So what I have for you today is a consolidation plan for the Department of Public Works operation.
You know what, excuse me, do we have to take these one at a time, or could you read both into the records, because he's covering both these topics here?
You can read both. Into the
Okay, Madam Clerk, if you could just read the second, because these are companion pieces, correct, Mr. Dever?
Yeah.
Okay.
Resolution number 2017-0201, authorizing an agreement with Village of Newburgh Heights for relocation costs for the Harvard Yard facility for the period 1/1/2018 through 6/30/2031.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, Mr. Dever, I'm sorry.
Thank you, members of council, once again for allowing me to come before you today to present on this item. So I have a brief PowerPoint, and I think it's been distributed to everybody, so you have copies of it available. So I'll try and go through it as quickly as possible. If you'd like to stop some way through it and ask questions in respect to any slide or anything like that, we're open to anything here. Okay, first the overview. The county charter envisioned efficiencies that included consolidation of the physical and human resources. The charter also merged operations of the previous county engineer, sanitary engineer, and the Department of Central Services into the Department of Public Works. Acting upon the goal of efficiency, the previous county executive initiated a study of the county's overall real estate portfolio. Mr. Jeffers made reference to that, and that's what brought us into this facility here today. There were three main recommendations that came out of that study, or three separate phases. So phase one was a consolidated county headquarters building, which we stand in here today. Phase two was a merger of the various archival and storage sites, which is nearing completion in the Halley Warehouse located over at 40th and Perkins. And our hope is that we'll have that fully occupied by the first quarter of 18. The third recommendation is why we're here before you today, and that was in regards to a consolidated public works operations and maintenance facility. A few areas of the operation and maintenance were previously merged when we sold under the county engineer our Fitch Road Yard out in Olmsted Township, and also the Hamilton Garage, which is located over on 18th and Superior. That was part of the building sales in 2013. We'll go to the next slide. The three facilities that I'm making reference for today are, the first is the sanitary engineer facility, which is located at 61 West Canal Road in Valley View. The second is the fleet services or Brook Park Road Garage. That's located at 4000 Brook Park Road in the city of Cleveland, very close to State and Brook Park. And the third and final piece is the Road and Bridge York Road Yard, located at 14875 York Road in North Royalton. That's at York and Route 82. Go to the next slide. So first, the sanitary engineer building is home to our sanitary inspection and maintenance division. And permitting, our bridge inspection department works out of there, and that equates to roughly 125 employees work down at this current location. As you know, our sanitary utility operation has grown significantly over the last decade and is now serving over 40 communities, including Lorain County. Just recently, the communities of Berea and Fairview Park have joined us, or are one of the communities that we provide services to. The current facility is bound by the Cuyahoga River on one side, the canal, or the Cuyahoga, or the Canal Road, I'm sorry, and there's a development taking place on the former Golf Dome site that used to be, you could see it from the 480 bridge if you were going over the Cuyahoga Valley. Expansion's not a possibility, and we're currently lacking parking for both employees and equipment. We are forced to store equipment and sanitary vehicles outside, which include premature depreciation. At one time, right to the north there where the Golf Dome is, we were leasing 60 parking spaces for our employees because we weren't able to park them at the facility Like I said, that is under development now by a separate developer. Next page there is the Fleet Services Brook Park Road Garage. It accounts for roughly 15 employees that work there. That's where all of the county vehicles are serviced in the county. All county vehicles needing routine maintenance and repair are brought to this location. Like I said, it's at Brook Park and State Road. The use of the building is consistent with the neighboring properties and should lend itself to sale of a similar use. Next page, there's the Road and Bridge York Road Yard. This houses our road and bridge maintenance operations and accounts for roughly 45 employees work out of there. This staff performs the maintenance on the 200-plus county bridges and also takes care of roads in the 2 townships. They also assist our sanitary maintenance group by completing the necessary road, driveway, sidewalk repairs whenever sanitary does an excavation. This group comes behind and does the restoration work. So what we did initially was a site location, and in the center of the county, for all intents and purposes, is at 77 and 480. We initially looked at approximately a 4-mile radius from this interchange. And this provides us with the ability to reach both the west end and the east end of the county in under 20 minutes. Actually, we did a time, it's around 18 minutes to get you out to Mayfield Heights or to Olmsted Township, or whatever response in those 2 communities we do service. There's also access to multiple highways in case of incident on one causing a backup. We have 176 and Route 7, or obviously Interstate 77 on the other end. Other regional entities have located in this area, such as Cleveland Water Department. They're across the street from the location that I'm going to provide. Real estate search was done in the area, and the only site meeting our requirements within that 4-mile was the RTA facility. So this next page is just another map showing you where the facility is located. Those, if you look at the map in yellow, those are the communities we provide service for. Actually, I think there's one community missing from that. That may be a somewhat dated map. Okay, I'll go to the next slide there. The proposed location that we're recommending is the former RTA Harvard Garage. You're familiar with this site because we've been currently leasing this for the last number of years to store files, furniture, and much of that files and furniture are going to be relocated into the Halley warehouse once it's completed. We've already started some of that relocation. We are paying a lease payment currently of over $222,000 a year for the RTA facility. RTA built this in the early 1990s. They consolidated their operations in early 2000, and they left this building basically vacant. They had been using it for some of their security forces and training and some excess storage of old buses. This provides us space under one roof for our operations and vehicles, outdoor parking for our employees, and additional vehicle storage and fuel capabilities, and also bulk materials. The benefits of the proposed location, and there's a multitude of benefits for it. It allows for the continued growth of our sanitary operations. Since 2008, our revenue growth with sanitary since 2008 is over 100%. We've grown from 28 communities to 40. A centralized location allows us to serve our communities and customers more efficiently. We also avoid the capital spending of our existing facility. For example, there's roof replacements, boiler replacements. There's various items on this current CIP for work that needs to be done to these 3 facilities that I'm making note of. The consolidation of forces under one roof provides improved staff and managerial efficiencies for the divisions located in the facility. We have new capabilities with the consolidation, the construction of an on-site drying pad. Currently, we take the grit that we get from our sanitary facilities and we take it to the regional sewer district where it is dumped at their facility. That contract is in excess of $600,000 a year. We believe we're going to be able to save over $200,000 a year building our own drying facility and then disposing of that grit. The added protection and storage of vehicles will prolong the life of our fleet and equipment, and that's currently stored outside. Our fleet manager predicts that's a 20% savings. We will maximize the use of the county vehicles and equipment. When one division isn't using certain equipment, the other division can utilize it. From trucks, pickup trucks, from dump trucks, from backhoes. We have a multitude of equipment that both sanitary and fleet can interchange using. The ability to store emergency management vehicles also is another thing I'd like to highlight here, that we've identified space at this location to, as many of you know, a few years ago, we were, there was a proposal to build out in Broadview Heights an emergency management facility where it was going to store emergency management vehicles. We've identified an area within this site that we can store those vehicles also. This allows for a centralized county fuel station currently located for, conveniently located for the sheriff and other county departments. Lastly, there's a benefit of located in the consolidated site in Newburgh Heights, as they are proposing an annual contribution to this effort for us to relocate there. In addition to that, and we'll get into this a little bit later, is in regards to Newburgh Heights, what they're proposing to offer to assist in this relocation effort. The projected cost and funding, anticipated cost, it's $3.8 million for the purchase of the property, which was vetted through an appraisal process. The overall value of this project is going to be in the range of $21 million. We've identified it on our capital plan, and it's been shown on the capital plan, but we've been working towards this effort. The build-out cost, which is going to come before this group again, before obviously we go into any type of contract, is anticipated to be $15.7 million to design and build out the space for our operations. There's approximately going to be $1.5 million for relocation and outfitting of the space. While the project will be initially funded by the general fund reserve, a possible future bond sale and debt service will be paid back by the sale of the consolidated properties and the agencies that occupy those facilities at a rate of approximately 70% for the sanitary, 20% for the road and bridge, and then 10% for through fleet services.
Sure, Mr. Miller.
The portions that are going to be paid by fleet services and road and bridges, how long is that going to be paid over?
We're looking right now, based on our calculations, we were doing a 15-year payback, debt service payback on this item. So that's what, and we'll have additional information on that as we move along in the slides.
So the general fund is going to have to front $18 million over 15 years. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it'll front it at first, but the sanitary and the road and bridge fund will contribute basically 90% to that.
But that's over 15 years.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
What? Yeah, they're going to take
Okay.
18 million in reserves and front it, and then it'll be paid back over 15 years.
If I could just comment on that, the road and bridge and sanitary.
State your name.
Mike Chambers, Public Works. The road and bridge and sanitary will be paying the debt service, which the interest is estimated at like 3.5%. So the initial costs will be incurred by the general fund, but once the project's bonded out, we will immediately start making repayments, probably by the end of 2018. So it's not like that full cost will be borne by the general fund. In addition to that, the general fund does keep all the interest earned by sanitary in their cash accounts as well. But just so you know, as far as that debt's going to go, it's not like that whole 15 million is going to wait the full time. We'll be making payments as it goes.
Okay, appreciate that. Okay, Mr. Dever.
Okay, the next page is the project financials. The table shows the project cost and split as described on the previous slides. I'm sure you could read through that. Anticipated loan interest rate, as Mike had just said, was 3.5%. And you'll see the annual debt loan payments by each of the divisions. Note the cost savings described in the previous slides. Actually, I'll pull back on that. The next slide here anticipates the future milestones that we're proposing. If we move forward with the project and the sale is passed by council, our intent is to advertise and select a design builder by the first quarter of 2018 and begin construction by the second quarter of 2018. We'll also start to market the buildings, and we'll make sure we do how we go about marketing those buildings, I think, was somewhat telling in the earlier conversation, and we'll make sure that that's above board and everyone has a clear understanding of how that will go forward. That primarily schedule would show that we begin to move operations into the remodeled facility in the first quarter of 2019 is our intent. So we anticipate that there will probably be about a 9-month construction window there. And then we'd move various phases first. Most likely our fleet maintenance would be the first operation that would come into the facility. Once again, that design build contract is something that is going to come before this council sometime in the future.
Mr. Schron has a question.
Yeah, this is a 15 to 20-year commitment to this facility, it looks like, if I'm understanding correctly.
That's correct.
Within that, and I saw that you do have a filling station as part of the finalized program.
That's right.
What fuels will we be using? We'll be using. I'll go the other way. Will we be using natural gas at some point at a filling station? Will be in 20 years, high likelihood that commercial vehicles will be using electric also. Will this filling station be designed to handle petroleum, natural gas, and electric at some point along the way?
Yes, that's very interesting, Mr. Schron. The facility, when RTA built it out, Dominion partnered with them, and they had built a CNG, compressed natural gas station here in the past. At this time, the county does not have any CNG vehicles, but our intent is to leave that facility still in place. And as we continue to move forward and we do the cost analysis, if we're going to go down that path, that we can restart that facility again. We are planning to have unleaded fuel there and diesel fuel also, so that if the sheriff vehicles, if they come out that way or anybody else, that they'll be able to come in there, swipe cards. We're going to try and set it up similar to a get-go so people can come in, get their fueling, and move right out of there again. But the CNG component, we had met with Dominion. We went and looked at their fleet, and we're still exploring that option. So the purchases right now, we do not have any CNG in our fleet.
I know, but as I think you and I have had this conversation before, that we could be a revenue enhancement for the budget to be a CNG distribution for the police and fire in Independence, the police and fire in Brecksville, Seven Hills, all those stations, all those service vehicles that go home at night. We're not very far away if we had the CNG there. And so there's no question that natural gas is a lower cost fuel to be burning. And as long as the vehicles are going home at night, it wouldn't be very far to come to us. And I'd love for us to get into the distribution of natural gas to our service sector. We have regionalization where regionalization would really have an impact.
True. There's currently, I think there's 4 CNG locations throughout the county right now, and would we? It's a good possibility but we need to look at the business case for it to make sure it makes sense before we bring it back to you.
Yeah.
If we're going to proceed
Well, RTA's
forward.
put natural gas in the station over in East Cleveland.
That's right.
Has got natural gas, and the one that they're just in the process of building is going to have a natural gas distribution. So we could have 6, 8 natural gas public facilities that we could be selling to use for public equipment. I think it would be a way in which we can see revenue for budgets in the future.
Sure.
Okay, Mr. Dever, and also I'd like the record to reflect that Ms. Conwell joined us some time ago, but I just want to make sure she was part of the last resolution as well, so. Okay, Mr. Dever.
So that's pretty much my presentation, and I was just going to leave it up for,
Okay.
I'm sure the council has questions.
Okay, Ms. Conwell will lead it off with a question.
I just have a couple. Through the chair to Director Dever, how many years have we leased at the 220 price?
At the 220 price, well, actually, we've expanded our footprint there. In 2019, we were at $65,000 a year. The square footage escapes me right now. But as buildings close down, files, documents, all kinds of things, we've basically taken over 2/3 of this facility, and that's why the lease payments had increased, because we took a larger footprint within the building, because they were still maintaining it.
Okay, and I don't know what my second question was. I'm reading it, but it doesn't make sense, so I might have to come back.
Okay.
Sure.
Any questions, Ms. Baker?
Thank you. This is my first look, so my questions, bear with me here. I see that if you add up the square footage that we're in now, it's about 88, let me see here, 2.32.
Yeah, it's about 93,000 square feet is the
Okay.
current, is what we're currently housed in.
So if I may then, thank you for that. If what we're proposing then is moving into a 193, so we're adding 100,000 square feet, do I have my numbers right?
That's correct.
Okay, so 100,000 extra square feet, are we at capacity, putting aside the parking, are we at capacity of these, the 3 buildings that we exist today?
Oh, yes, we are. And actually, a few years ago, we started, the key piece to this is the sanitary facility located in Valley View. That has, as I had said earlier, it has grown tremendously since 2008, and we've outgrown the site, and there is no further room for growth there. We currently park, we did a lot of engine block heaters outside, and so we've got expensive vehicles that are parked outside during the winter months. And so we're maxed out at the current location. And as I had said, the revenue that since 2008 has been 100% growth at the sanitary facility with the addition of the other communities. We're continuing to look for growth. We've got plans this coming early into the new year to go out and market those communities we currently don't serve, so that we can let them know about our program and ways that we can help them save money. So that's on our radar for the first quarter of 18, I'm sorry. So it is, we're maxed out. There is no other additional room for growth at any of the facilities.
If I may, given that we are occupying 100,000 square feet more, and of course we will take, I'm sure, more room than we are now because of what you just said, will there be any opportunity for us to lease any space to any other for revenue generating at this location?
Currently, I haven't looked at that as to bring additional maybe agencies into the facility. It's a large footprint. There's over 18 acres there.
Right.
There may be some potential for that. But just in our immediate needs, I know that we're going to use the space, and my intent is to build it out appropriately for it. We have a lot of bulk storage also, concrete, stone, sand, topsoil. And currently, we end up drawing that from various Boyus Excavating and Kurtz Brothers and others. We go and get it. But sometimes on weekends, those places aren't open, and we've got to go and collect materials. So it's better to have control of that stuff all in one location. So as of right now, no, I haven't gone down that path looking for others.
Getting to the money piece of this, the combination of the three buildings only brings $4 million.
Well, that's, once again, that's the appraised value. So depending on how we decide to market these facilities, we think they're in marketable areas. And like I said, down at sanitary, there's significant build-out taking place on the one side of the facility now, and we feel that it's going to draw considerable interest. How we go about that, but we're thinking it's $4 million we should be able to realize after the sale of those three facilities.
Okay, and then the new building, of course, we're selling 3 for $4 and buying 1 for, what was the price? $21 million. It's considerable difference in.
Sure. So what I would say is we had a series of capital improvements at the current facilities we're at that added up to almost $6 million in capital improvements to those facilities. On top of that, we were looking at an expansion possibility at the sanitary facility. And we had a consultant come in and do a square footage look and to see if to build another facility next to, knowing still that we were a limited space. That number came in at $7.3 million. So together, I've got roughly $13 million in capital expense that I would have spent at the 3 locations. The efficiency of bringing everybody under one roof. Currently, whenever a vehicle breaks down, it has to take the trip over to Brook Park Road Yard. Now, we haven't done a clear calculation of that time, the inefficiency of moving vehicles back and forth. So, our hope is we're going to realize, well, it's not a hope. I think we'll be able to show a clearer analysis of why it makes sense to bring everything under one roof. We're looking at multiple shifts. Right now, sanitary is on a double shift. Having our mechanics working late at night. So when those vehicles are down, that's when mechanics are working on it. So you have everything available to you during the daylight hours when most of our work is being done. So we see multiple efficiencies on putting everyone under one roof.
If I just may ask, just to that point, do you anticipate any attrition or any less of employees because of everyone under one roof, maybe cross-trained, perhaps?
Yeah.
The efficiencies that you're talking about could be through retirements and things like that you may not need everyone at this one facility that you are now expending at 3?
Well, currently I have 3 separate bargaining units. Each of those groups have a different bargaining unit. The intent is they stay focused on their work, but I have managers now that oversee it, and the additional managers and administrative help that's in the building. Once you bring everybody together, managers being able to go out on the road and see because this fleet, most of these people are scattered throughout the county on any given day. Obviously, we're GPSed up and you know where people are at, but it's good to have managers out on the road. So the road and bridge guys have 4 managers or supervisors that are driving around the county. There's 7 under sanitary. That cross managerial duties. I think we're going to see a benefit to that.
Okay, I think your highest employee was at the sanitary engineering building, the 125 employees.
125, and like I said, that's the group that continues to see that growth going on.
Yeah.
So we need to continue to plan. So we're in front of this, so it's not all of a sudden we're squeezed out, and then we have to turn away a possible community that wants to come on.
If I may add, the project financials, the money that we take from one fund to another, and I know we've been around this a few times, how can we afford to take 20% out of road and bridge, another 10% out of general fund, and even 70% of sanitary? So where, is something being sacrificed because we are moving those dollars into these areas?
Well, first off, too, we're hoping this $4 million is low. I mean, most people know me, I'm very conservative. I don't want to give you guys more than, but we're hoping that's a lot higher and it lowers down their percentages. In addition to that, I did a calculation, especially with sanitary. By the time we consider the capital investment in vehicles, our fleet manager says by parking outside, we're going to get an extra couple of years useful life. In addition to that drying pad, I estimate we're going to probably save about $600,000 a year efficiency. So, you know, the impact can go to that loan of $1.020 million, or it could be the offset to the increase in utilities. We can look at it either way, but no matter what, both of these budgets do have the funds available for that. Sanitary, like the director said, you know, we are actively in negotiation with a couple communities right now to expand even more. If you go out there any given day and you take a look at our fleet and all of our vehicles with these, you know, electrical outlets keeping them warm, I mean, we're just not efficient anymore. So we are actually losing a lot of money that way, but we want to be able to handle that growth. So it is legitimate expenses from the road and bridge and the sanitary, but the bottom line is, you're talking about the 12.
Where's the 20% coming from?
This is coming out of the operations. I want to assure you,
Out of the
Councilman,
yes,
I
thank
promise you, this is not coming out of any of our capital funds.
If I may stop you there, it's
Yeah.
not coming out of capital funds and it's not coming out of the, I mean, capital is, I look at bricks and mortar, road and bridge work is different than capital, I would think, maybe not in your terms. Is this, any of this money coming out of what we would have been repairing, but now we're putting into this project?
Right, now let me rest assured, we have the original road and bridge fund, which handles all of our administration and our maintenance. That's where this is coming out of. You have the 5 and the 750 permisses, and hopefully the new one, that's 100% not going to be impacted. That's the bricks and mortars in the communities that our program.
All right, if I can follow on that, what is the, you know, of course, the administrative fees, we all understand that. What is the maintenance piece that you are now using for this fund? What are we not doing in maintenance, or where is that being taken from that we no longer are going to be able to do because we're putting it into Ridge? And thank you for the other. I'm good to know that the 7 and the, I guess it's what, 250 and 5, yeah.
Sure, if you recall from our conversation the other
Yes,
day,
yes.
approximately $2.5 million from road and bridge goes over to our capital programs. That was my conservative number to handle fluctuations. There's probably about another $1 million that, you know, I utilize for maybe additional vehicles. That's where that's going to come from. It's clearly not out of those other issues. Nobody's losing, none of our programs being suffered on the capital side.
And what about your vehicles then? How do you cover the dollars for the vehicles if you're taking it out of that fund?
Once again, I still have, between our expenses and our revenues that we're taking in addition to that 2.5 million, I still have about $1 million in between that's going to handle all of that. On top of that, we're expecting to save a lot of money on the vehicles because on any given day, sanitary might have 7 or 8 vehicles idle, road and bridge. We can start using them. So I expect our capital purchase to really go down over time.
That answers.
Okay, the sanitary piece, I know you said you want to expand upon that. 70% is a big number. So you expect that to be neutral as far as what you expect to get and what you're taking for this fund?
Well, exactly. What I anticipate there is the same thing. We have that drying pad. There's going to be savings, operational efficiencies. That's at almost about $600,000 ballpark. We are growing right now. Like I said, I'm talking to communities right now, trying to expand our footprint. You know, I don't want to name them right now, but long story short is we are going to have that revenue. In order to satisfy them, I got to have the equipment. And if our equipment is breaking down prematurely, requiring all that additional downtime, by bringing it into this facility, there's going to be a huge cost savings there. Not to mention the productivity that we lose transporting our vehicles to repair. That's immeasurable. I mean, that's, you know, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Let me just touch on that also, is we were looking at the sanitary facility for expansion, so $7.3 million. If this doesn't go forward, you know, so be it, but we need to continue to plan then what's our next step here, because how we're currently set up is not going to work if we want to be positioned correctly for whatever growth. So we were, you know, 7.3 was a number, obviously a consultant pulled that together for us over, so I'm sure there could have been a much deeper dive on it, but I needed some type of number to start with.
Lastly, if I may, in a big picture question that I can answer to others who ask me this question, we have found that, of course, Cuyahoga County has lost population, We find that our schools are consolidating. We're closing a lot of elementary schools. Our high schools are smaller. How can I, justify the growth of what we need here and going from 100,000 approximately square feet to almost 200,000 square feet, and the continued growth of your needs to that extent when we have a population loss over the last 10 to 15 years?
Sure.
Give me a good.
So it's briefly, I mean, you have the 59 communities, and
Right.
everybody provides their own, a lot of them provide their own individual service. So I really look at the sanitary group as that one that has really shined in regards to regionalization. We've reached out to these communities because many of them, and since we've got 40 of them now, there's still another 19 that are doing that service themselves.
Okay.
So the cost of that equipment, the jet vac itself, if that thing's not running every day, that's $400,000 on the low end for that piece of equipment. If that thing's not running every day, you're losing out. You need to keep that thing in operation and moving. I just come back to it as these communities cannot afford, just because their workforce is shrinking within their individual communities, and they're focused probably more so on potholes, things that you can see. The sewers need to be maintained, and so they're going to be turning to somebody. And I think we positioned ourselves very effectively as the answer for those communities. So those communities, how I would say it is, they need to step back maybe from providing that service and look to us, because I think we can do it in a cost-effective way.
And just one final, in those 19 communities that you are trying to, which probably are the hardest, if you have 40 now and there's 59, you have 19 to go. Do you anticipate that those 19 will come along, or the majority of them will come along, that they find value in what you're doing rather than themselves?
Sure. Well, the city of Cleveland is most likely going to stay doing their own thing,
Okay.
and that's their water pollution control.
Right.
It's a large group. They're comparable in size actually to us.
Okay.
Maybe they are trying to market to those outside communities too. I don't really know. And if it is competition, maybe it's good for us to go head to head with them. But let's say the remaining 18 communities, I think we've got a viable shot at it. Some of them, those are typically the communities on the outside, the likes of Westlake. They're a little bit more affluent. They can afford to do these services. But I think if they took a look at us, I think we offer a viable product. So I'm willing to go and have that discussion with them.
Right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. And I can speak from experience when I was on council in Parma. One of the best things we did was have a contract with the county to help with the sewers over there. And there was a point in time where every time it rained, I cringed. And then you guys came along, and I only cringed every couple months. So no, it's been a very beneficial, very good for regionalism as well. Mr. Schron?
And that's just exactly what I'm going to follow on the chairman's comments, because this to me is to be congratulated, because you're going at the crossroads of 77 and 480. I mean, it's as close to the center of the county as you could get to be able to come into downtown areas or any of to go out to the east or west coast suburbs. And to me, it's actually fulfilling the commitment that we made when this county government was created, that we are going to look to regionalism. So if of those 40 you already have, if 40 of those were providing some of this service before, and they've come in together this is truly an effort of regionalism. If we could do this with fire departments, where does every city need to have a ladder truck? Does every city need to have all these other things? I know that $400,000 piece of equipment cleaning out those lines is an expensive piece of equipment, and unfortunately, some of them have gone out and tried to buy those kind of things or rent them, as opposed to coming right to us in the county. So my congratulations. I'm supportive of it. I will be watching how you spend the money to do the build out. Don't misinterpret. My acquiescence, as you know, my support for the idea of a central location is a great idea, and I think it's a real example, as the chairman said, of regionalism. So I will be supporting this phase, but I will keep your feet to the fire on the build out costs.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Schron. Ms. Connell, anything else? Okay.
just one
Ms.
follow-up.
Baker? Sure.
The 40 that are with us now, are they completely with us? Are they
No.
100% with us?
No, they're not. So it's, I believe the number is 25 is complete. We're providing comprehensive services to them. Some of them just have us on an as-need or on-call basis. And that's how it started with the city of Rocky River and also Fairview Park. And actually, we've got a discussion next week with the service director about expanded service in Fairview Park. So, you know, it's as we do work there, that's when they'll decide, hey, do we want you guys to do more or not?
Great, thank you for that
Okay.
clarification.
Thank you. And I understand there's a proposed substitute on this as well.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I could at least bring that forward. I don't know if you have the document in front of you or not.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Page
So
15, I believe.
It's section 2, and it makes reference to the county reserves the opportunity to reimburse the advancement made by the general fund for the $3.8 million purchase of the property for future sale of bonds for purposes consistent with the purchase, consistent with 26 CFR and all other applicable laws and regulations. So if it's possible, Mr. Chair, substituting for the ordinance in front of you.
I'll move for the substitute to replace the existing language.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the substitute legislation. Could I have a motion in favor or all in favor? I'm sorry. Aye. Opposed? And the ayes have it. Okay.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, also, right now, this is on schedule for a 3 reading, and we are being very aggressive, and my hope is until the final reading, we were hoping to get the RFQ out for a design builder a few weeks in advance, and if we waited for the 3rd reading, that would put us into mid-December. My hope is the week after Thanksgiving, if they got 2nd reading suspension, that I can put this RFQ on the street and start the process.
Yeah,
So I was
Mr.
hoping
Chairman,
to
I'll
be
move for a second reading
Okay.
suspension to be brought forth at the next council meeting.
Okay, we have a motion for second reading suspension on 2017-0200. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. And Mr. Dever, 2017-0201.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that. That item is directly tied into the purchase of this facility. The city of Newburgh Heights had approached us on trying to assist in the relocation efforts, and we've been in active discussions with them. And basically, we came to a tentative agreement that they would give a proportionate share of the benefits, because obviously you're relocating roughly 150 employees and the associated taxes. And we've come to an agreement about 50% of that value for us to relocate. And also they are going to be providing a police presence on the facility. They're not on the facility, but to patrol the facility on an hourly basis. So we're very appreciative that they came forward with this, and so that's what this legislation is before you. It still needs to be approved by the village's council, but I think we've got a tentative agreement in hand here.
Okay, and so as far as the timing on this second part, can we do the full 3 readings then if they're still
Yes.
working on it with their own council?
We sure could.
Okay,
Okay.
then that's what we'll do.
All right. Do you need that? You need a motion to move that forward then, I assume?
Yeah.
Okay. So move.
Okay, and we have a motion, and could I have a second? Second to move this on for 3rd reading.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
I
thank
really
you, Mr.
appreciate
Dever.
it. And feel free to call us on any.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know,
Tell
I
us
think we have to
what you
vote first.
I knew
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Schron and James.
I just saw the eyes over there looking at us.
Because you're saying about 3rd reading, you mean 2nd reading?
I'm sorry,
or second
second
reading
reading.
adoption? Just 2nd
I'm
reading?
saying second reading. I'm sorry.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes. Let's move it along.
I saw the eyes. I
Yes.
got that look before and I sent you.
You're right. That's for second reading. Thank you. Okay. They're dropping like flies here, Mr. Schron. See? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Okay. The next resolution, Madam Clerk.
Resolution number 2017-0202, declaring that public convenience and welfare requires resurfacing Pleasant Valley Road from State Road to Broadview Road in the city of Parma. Total estimated project cost $4,944,000, finding that special assessments will neither be levied nor collected to pay for any part of the county's cost of said improvement.
Okay, state your name for the record, please.
Nicole English, Public
Okay.
Works.
And Ms. English, with this resolution regarding?
This is our first step of welfare and convenience for a project in Parma on Pleasant Valley Road from State to Broadview. This was identified through NOACA on their tip that came out in July. And so it's a federal project that would be paid for 80% federally, 10% by the county, and 10% by the city of Parma.
Excellent. Okay, any questions from my colleagues? I can attest to that this work needs to be done. drive through there regularly. Any questions, Ms. Conwell?
I don't have any questions on this, Mr. Chair, but just a little confused about our last vote. So I know both of the items B and C were read into the record, but I think we just voted on one.
No, we did the first one first. Yeah,
Okay.
we did the second.
Then I'm good.
Thanks for asking. No, that's fair. Okay, any questions on this, 217-0202? Okay, seeing none. What type of timeline are you looking at on this?
This one actually we have ready to go for 2018. As far as
yeah.
It could go in 3 readings. That's
Okay.
fine with us.
All right. With that then, could I have a motion for second reading? Oh, I'm sorry. You have a question? Okay, Ms. Conwell has a question. That's okay.
Okay. Ever since I've been here, Parma's been getting their roads done. No offense. So
I think that's a good
isn't
thing,
this
huh?
something that we've done in the last 7 years, or is this a different part?
We've done several Pleasant
this is a different
Valleys
part.
throughout the
Okay.
county.
Yes.
This one,
That's right, Bagley Road and,
yeah, it does Bagley, Pleasant Valley. Actually, you'll see later on in the agenda, there's an amendment to a different Pleasant Valley project. So it travels throughout the whole county, so it does appear a lot. This one was identified through NOACA on their asset management program, so we didn't pick it necessarily. It fell in line with our priorities, but NOACA selected it and they awarded the 80% funding and came to us to run the project. So we agreed to do that.
I'm just wondering, can you send the council, or next time that the Pleasant Valley Road and State Road projects come up, you can kind of identify which piece we're at now?
Sure. Yeah, this one's State to Broadview, so a different section than we've done in the past.
Okay. All right, thank you. Could I have a motion for second reading? I think Ms. Baker did. A second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, nays and ayes have it. Aye. Okay, next resolution, Ms. Johnson.
Resolution number 2017-0203, declaring that public convenience and welfare requires replacement of Stone Road Bridge number 00.98 over Hemlock Creek in the city of Independence. Total estimated project cost $1,500,000, finding that special assessments will neither be levied nor collected to pay for any part of the county's cost of said improvement.
Okay, Ms. English, this particular resolution.
So this is, again, the first step of welfare and convenience. This is Stone Road Bridge over Hemlock Creek in the city of Independence. It had been listed on our upcoming bridge projects for a little while due to condition. We are aligning it with, the city is working on a Hemlock Trail piece that they have federal funding that is traversing over this bridge. So we're trying to align them together, the projects, so that we're not ripping up their project, they're not ripping up our project. So we're looking to construct this next year.
Okay. All right, any questions from my colleagues on this project? Okay, seeing none. Again, the timeline here, any particular time issues, or can this go
No, this
full
one can
three?
go 3.
Okay, could I have a motion for second reading? Okay, I have a motion and a second for second reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Okay, the next resolution, Madam Clerk.
Resolution number 2017-0204, declaring that public convenience and welfare requires rehabilitation of West 41st Street Bridge number 01.05 over North Folk Southern Railway and Train Avenue in the city of Cleveland. Total estimated project cost $400,000, finding that special assessments will neither be levied nor collected to pay for any part of the county's cost of said improvement.
Okay, Ms. English.
So this, again, first step in welfare and convenience for the project. This bridge, we did do a temporary repair last year. The bearing fell on one side of the bridge. So we did a temporary repair, but now we're going through doing the final fix. And we are looking to sell this at the end of the year or early 2018. So this one I would ask for a second reading suspension if possible. It's $400,000. We do have $100,000 that we received in issue 1 funding, so that's offsetting our cost.
Okay, and you're looking for second reading suspension on this?
Please.
Okay, could I have, any questions? Okay, could I have a motion for second reading suspension on this? Okay, I have a motion, could I have a second?
Second.
Okay,
Can I ask?
sure, sure, Ms. Conwell.
Okay, so the West 41st Bridge, I see there's 2 parts of West, right in there. There's 2 bridges, so is it both of them, or?
This is one bridge over on the NS Railroad and Train Avenue. It's just south of 90. So we are south of the interchange, so it shouldn't affect traffic, as much.
So is it one bridge? I was thinking
It is-
it was actually 2.
I believe
might
it's
be
one,
wrong.
just one structure
Okay.
number, yeah.
Thank you.
And just as an aside, it's been brought to my attention, I think there's a typo, it should be Norfolk,
Yes.
not Norfolk.
Correct,
Okay.
Norfolk.
Just want to make sure we get the right railroad. All right.
That was our
All
mistake.
right. Could I have a motion for second reading suspension? I have a motion and a second for second reading suspension. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. Okay. Next resolution, Madam Clerk.
Resolution number 2017-0205, declaring that public convenience and welfare requires roadway and traffic signal improvements along Babbitt Road, East 260th Street, and Euclid Avenue in the city of Euclid. Total estimated project cost $686,470, finding that special assessments will neither be levied nor collected to pay for any part of the county's costs of said improvement.
Okay, Ms. English, if you could.
So this, again, first step in the project for public convenience and welfare. This project is related to the Amazon distribution site in Euclid.
Okay.
So we had brought forward the previous Amazon site improvements, which were in North Randall. We do want to change the amount on here. At the time we put this in, that was the estimated project cost. The city's engineer did a review of the publicly eligible costs around the intersections, and the new cost for the project is $1,102,000, and the county is willing to fund $300,000 is what we're trying to work with the city on. And then the city would be responsible for the remainder. However, they're targeting 50% of Jobs Ohio and Ohio Jobs and Commerce funds to pay for the remainder.
Okay. Okay, you want to substitute language in this then for that amount?
Mr. Chair, you can simply have an amendment
Okay.
on the floor.
Okay, so could I have a motion for an amendment to this to reflect the amount of, was it $1,102,000?
Correct.
Okay, and a second? Okay, I have a motion and a second to amend. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay for the amendment. And opposed, nay. Ayes have it, okay. And then any questions, Ms. Conwell?
Okay, so our part was only 300,000, so does the city of Euclid have the remaining funds? So if we're voting on it now, how would that be established? And
Question.
So our agreement will be with the city that says they are responsible for the remaining funds. However, they're working closely with Team NEO and Ohio Jobs and Commerce to acquire the rest of the money through grants. But because we don't deal with those economic development grants and loans and requirements, we've pushed the city is responsible for that. So even though we're saying in the legislation the city is responsible for $802,000, they're intending to get majority of that in grants from the state.
okay, so I guess my other question would be, how do we know, because we do this a lot here, where we pass legislation, then we find out money was never utilized, and we have these big pockets of money. So how would we know when this actually moves forward?
We are working with the city closely and their engineer to start work on the project. The board that oversees the Job and Commerce funds, they're meeting in the first week of December to award their share of it, which right now is roughly at 50%. So there will be some agreements in place by the end of the year that we'll know the money's all in place and it'll go forward. So we could give you an update just to let you know what's all taking place. The same with the other Amazon site. It's working through a similar cycle. It's just because they're going so quickly that they want to get in there at the end of next year that we're all trying to work in tandem to get our approvals in line to make sure we can get this done.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'm assuming if the funds wouldn't be obtained by the city, then this would go back into our fund.
Correct.
Okay. Did we do a motion on that? I don't remember. We didn't do a okay, we didn't vote. Okay. We did amended. We did amend. Okay. And so again, you're looking for second reading suspension.
Correct.
On this. Could I have a motion for second reading suspension? And a second. Okay, I have a motion and a second for second reading suspension. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, aye. The ayes have it. Okay, the next resolution, Madam Clerk.
Resolution number 2017-0206, approving right-of-way plans as set forth in plat number M-5030 for rehabilitation of North Main Street Bridge number 00.12 over the Chagrin River in the village of Chagrin Falls.
Okay, Mr. English.
Thank you. So this is approval of right-of-way plans. There's actually only four parcels required, and they're only temporary right-of-way that we need, and they are from the village themselves. So we're anticipating a donation from the village. However, we need to file this official motion in order to let us negotiate on right-of-way.
Okay. And the village, you said, is going to donate?
That is our understanding.
Okay. All right. And what type of time frame are we looking at here then?
This can go through readings, that's
Okay.
right.
Any questions on this?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Ms. Conwell?
Through the chair to Ms. English, was there some work done on this, something that we did prior to the Chagrin River?
You've
Bridge.
seen this bridge, the consultant contract has come forward before you. So we are in the middle of designing it. So that's probably what, and you saw welfare and convenience to start the project.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, could I have a motion for second reading? And a second? Okay, I have a motion and a second for second reading. All those in favor say aye. Aye. And the opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Miss Clerk, Madam Clerk.
Resolution number 2017-0207, authorizing an amendment to contract number CE 1400198-01 with PERC ME Joint Venture for improvement of Pleasant Valley Road, Bagley Road, from Pearl Road to York Road in the cities of Middleburg Heights and Parma for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $600,280.52, authorizing the county engineer on behalf of the county executive to make an application for allocation from county motor vehicle $5 license tax funds in the amount of $138,064.52 to fund said amendment.
Okay, and if you could state your name for the record, please.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of council. Tom Sotek, Department of Public Works.
Okay, Mr. Sotek, what's this resolution about?
Mr. Chairman, this resolution involves amended agreement for the Pleasant Valley Road project. This section in particular is.
You look like you're sure.
Thanks. Is from York Road in Parma to Pearl Road in Middleburg Heights. It stretches through the cities of Parma and Middleburg Heights. The nature of this amended agreement, the big items on this amended agreement include utilities, issues with utilities that we had, specifically changing some of the phasing to accommodate the utility relocations that were going on as we proceeded along the project. There's a item for cement stabilization. We encountered some soft subgrade soils in section 1, which was the Parma section, and the plans remedied that situation by undercut and fill with a granular material. The soil conditions were wetter, and the soil was less suitable than we anticipated. And it was decided going forward on the project in the Middleburg Heights section to just go to cement stabilization, which afforded us, it's more environmentally friendly. It's less disruption to traffic and the residents, and it's mainly a quicker process more than anything. So,
Okay.
But that's the major nuts and bolts of the amendment.
Okay. Do you have an anticipated end date for this project? It's been going on a little while, I know.
Right. Yeah, we're going to be finishing up for this year. We're up to Bartholomew Drive for this year. Right now, the anticipated completion date would be sometime in midsummer next year to finish everything up and wrap up the punch list, so on and so forth.
All right. Appreciate that. Any questions from my colleagues? Ms. Conwell?
When was through the chair to Tom, when was the last time this road was done? Or this section?
The last time this road was done is, this is a major reconstruction, so the road was overlaid, and I don't have the exact date for the last overlay. There was an interim overlay that we placed in Middleburg Heights a couple of years ago, but beyond that, it had been a number of years before we'd done any significant work on this this road to my knowledge.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none. What's the time frame on this, Mr. Sotek, as far as moving this along? Are we looking second reading suspension or full 3 readings on this? Mr. Dever?
I think 2 readings, suspension.
I'm sorry?
2 readings and suspension?
Second suspension, okay. Any objection to second reading suspension on this? I know they're working diligently out there. Okay, so we have motion and second for second reading suspension. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. All right, thank you, Mr. Sotek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other, let's see, public, let's see here, what we got left. Any miscellaneous business from members of council? And seeing none, any other public comment out there?
No, no one has signed in.
Okay. And with that, like a motion to adjourn? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. And this meeting is adjourned at 12:21 p.m.